It's our pleasure to speak with a writer many of you are familiar with. David Hoppe is the author of a new book entitled Personal Indianapolis. It's described as 13 years of observing, exhorting, and satirizing the Hoosier capital. David is a longtime columnist with Nouveau Newsweekly, and he'll be presenting a program at the library, Central Library, on October 20th to discuss his book. And David, it's a true pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you.
Nice to be here, John.
You've actually returned to your native town of Michigan City, Indiana, correct? When did you make that move?
Well, just a little over a year ago. We actually live in an even smaller town than Michigan City called Long Beach, Indiana. So we're close to the lake and just on the Indiana side of the Michigan border.
Okay. But you still continue to contribute to Nouveau Newsweekly, which I suppose speaks to the advantages of modern technology in the workplace today.
To a very great extent, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I'm able to, in effect, mail in my pieces every week from 150 miles away.
Yeah.
So, I contribute columns continually now and do the occasional cover story.
But your new book, Personal Indianapolis, which again you'll be presenting a program to discuss on October 20th, what will people find in this book?
Well, it's a collection of Nouveau columns. As you mentioned, I've been writing columns on a weekly basis for Nouveau since just before 2000. And we got to a point really where, when you do this every week, you begin to think, well, maybe there's a book here. It's interesting, though, because I'm not a big fan of books of columns. Oftentimes, if you're a columnist, you're writing to the headline that's just taken place. And so there is definitely a sell-by date with a lot of columns. They're written in the moment. They're a response to something that's happening today, an opportunity to really kind of keep a conversation going. And so books of columns can sometimes seem dated. But as I began to go through my columns, I found myself finding a sufficient number that really seemed to be relatively timeless, to seem to stand on their own as essays, really. And so I approached Nancy Baxter of Hawthorne Publishing, and she wasn't wild about the idea of books of columns either, as it turned out. But when she responded to this book, she went, we want to do this. So I'm very grateful for that. What's in the book? I've been writing about those places where culture, politics, the arts, and just really the sense of place in Indianapolis and Indiana in general, where all those elements come together. And so the book really is, I think, an exploration of a lot of these different types of issues. The issues that really don't go away. The issues that really have to do with how we think about ourselves, how we make decisions in Indiana, what it means to live in Indiana, or this part of the Midwest for that matter. And so I think people who pick up the book, at least I hope, are going to find a fairly multidimensional exploration of what, for lack of a better way of saying it, is the sense of place that we have in this city, in this state, and beyond that even in this region at this particular time in history.
Again, we're speaking with David Hoppe, who's the author of a new book, Personal Indianapolis, which will be discussed at his program on October 20th at Central Library. David, we also know of Kurt Vonnegut and his relationship to Indianapolis and the fact that he passed just prior to his giving a lecture for the library in 2007. You developed a personal friendship with Kurt Vonnegut, didn't you?
It's true. I met Kurt for the first time in 1991. At that time I was working with the Indiana Humanities Council, and I was in charge of a public program called Wordstruck, which was a citywide book festival. We had invited Kurt to come to Indianapolis to be the keynote speaker, and it became an opportunity for me to become acquainted with him. We were in the car together over the course of about 3 days, driving from one event to the next. And we became friends and correspondents. And over time, up until his passing in 2007, Kurt read many of the columns that are in Personal Indianapolis. In fact, he was a great champion of my column and really gave me a lot of encouragement, was like a kind of mentor to me.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on Indianapolis after 13 years of observing the city, where it's going and what it needs to do to continue on its path to progress?
Well, I've actually lived in Indianapolis for over 25 years, so until moving up north. So I've had a chance to experience the city through a lot of different changes. I mean, when I first moved here, for example, Circle Center Mall was a big hole in the middle of downtown. And I've had the opportunity then to see many of the ways in which the city has grown, and I don't think there's any question at this point about the tremendous trajectory that the city has experienced over this period of time. I think in many ways Indianapolis is the envy of a lot of comparably sized cities around the rest of the country. You talk to people from other places and they're amazed at how vibrant our downtown is, for example. Having said that, I mean, one also realizes that a lot of this dynamism has yet to really be experienced in many of the city's neighborhoods. And neighborhoods, as so many people like to say, is really where the character of Indianapolis truly exists. So clearly, leadership in Indianapolis has done a lot right in terms of creating a destination for people. The downtown works, and I think it works marvelously well. I mean, I've just been here for the annual Fringe Festival, and in many ways, in fact, you can look at the 10 years of the Fringe Festival and see just the way that particular event has grown and the way that event really reflects what's going on with downtown Indianapolis. At the same time, though, we're well aware of the issues with regard to crime. We're well aware that crime is up in many neighborhoods, not typically associated with burglaries, robberies, assaults, and so on. There's a lot on this city's plate. It's a big city, though oftentimes it doesn't feel that way. And I think the big challenge for Indianapolis is to try and figure out how it can sustain and maintain its character, the sense of intimacy, the sense of neighborhood, while at the same time continuing this march of progress downtown.
Well, I know over the years a lot of us have appreciated your exhorting Indianapolis and giving it your unique perspective on where it is and where it should be going, and we look forward to your program on October 20th at Central Library. David Hoppe, the author of Personal Indianapolis, he'll actually be presenting along with fellow author Douglas Wissing, who will be discussing his new book. So look for that on October 20th, and best of luck in your future endeavors, David.
Well, thanks very much, John.